Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by my friend Courtney Hamilton, who is a football and golf coach and math teacher at Woodberry Forest Academy, I believe, in Virginia. She'll correct me if I'm wrong on that. But Coach, thanks for being here today.
Thank you. It's Woodberry Forest School, as it stood for 125 years, 1800, something like that. So, yeah, it stood the test of time, and somehow so have I in coaching and teaching. So,
well, we're always trying to get better, and right off the bat, I fumbled, so it's all good. So why don't you help us ground the audience in who you are, Coach? Take us through your background as a coach. How'd you end up coaching? How'd you get into this space? And how'd you land where you are now? Kind of take us through the resume.
I started in schools and being in coaching because Germano Denise, who's at Stevenson, he knew my brother, and I had reached out to him after I graduated from USC and said, I'm bored with my job.
Can we press pause before you go down this road? Because you just skipped over a big chapter of why you're in coaching that happened at USC. So I think
I'm going to get to that.
All right.
I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. I was an assistant selling insurance after college, and I was not happy, and I missed what happens between 3 and 5. And between 3 and 5, from the time I grew up, I was playing soccer, I was playing basketball, and I was a golfer at St. Francis High School, a great girls golfing powerhouse. And for the 4 years prior, I was at USC working with Pete Carroll and Ken Norton Jr. and Ed Ogeron right there in the defensive room on the field. And it had embodied so much of my life, but not in a bad way. I didn't know how immersed I was because I was enjoying all of it. And this was from 2002, spring 2002 to spring 2005. And it was exhausting. I didn't think I'd ever go back to it. And then in the fall, between 3 and 5, there was a part of my life missing. And I knew he was at boarding school. I always had this idea in my head of being at a boarding school. And I said, okay, I'd like a job. I don't know how to do this. And as a bit of a plate to this, I have the USC defensive playbook, and I have the strength and conditioning manual. Let's talk. And I got up there. I did not initially get a job working at Stevenson, but I got a job coaching. And it was 2000, my first year, there's 2017. And they were amazing. And the boys made me fall in love with it. Michelle Grogan, who was the head of school at Stevenson, made me fall in love with it. And Tom Torrey and Sam Salerno. And just this year, I wrote to them like, God, can you remember that team? They were nothing short of amazing. And I knew right then, after being in the weight room, helping them get better, because seeing what it looked like, what success, looked like and what it took, getting them into the weight room, I still loved it. And I remember Connor Finch's dad comes to me and says, my son is stronger because of you. And I think from that point on, I knew somehow I wanted to streamline into this. And it took years of going back and getting my master's degree in education, being a student intern, having to work at a golf course, working at a diner, just so I can continue my enjoyment of coaching, and moved around from day schools while coaching at a high school. I was at Cardigan Mountain last year. We didn't have as highly competitive a schedule with COVID. And I was fortunate enough this last fall to get a job at Woodberry Forest School, which is absolutely amazing. They prize both academics and sports and honor. It has one of the stronger honor codes within private school. And to me, both academics and athletics are so important when you think about honor and what you give to it and what you put forth in that input and output. So far, it's been great. I've enjoyed the process.
Can you do me a favor and give a little bit of a snapshot of, how do I say this for the audience here? I guess boarding school life, because not a ton of people on this parents generally are listening from that lens. And so we can talk about some things that might not make any sense to other people. So when you say you're at Cardigan at a boarding school, Stevenson, you're working at day, or at, when you're at Catalina, it's a day, whatever, it's a day school, right? So just really quickly, soundbite of like what life is like in those spaces.
You are immersed in the space. It's a lifestyle. It's not a job. It is a lifestyle. And you live in a dorm or you live in a house just on campus, and you are with these boys or girls, depending on what school you're at. Woodberry is an all-boys school. I'm in the third form, which is the freshman boys dorm. And I'm not always seeing them every day on duty, but one every 8 days I'm on duty. And I'm overseeing study hall, making sure that they are in the evenings at their desks, as a parent would, studying, utilizing their time. We're making sure that they are embodying healthy habits, that they have a clean room, that they're, it's curfew, that they're abiding by rules, they're respecting others, they respect the staff that works with us by cleanup. So you're kind of in that parental role. And during the day, you're jumping in as a teacher. You are a coach immediately after. So you're kind of going from, beginning to end in some capacity as a teacher, as a parent. And for me as a teacher and coach, what I love about boarding school is that I can help the development of the individual. And that is especially for the third formers, they kind of come in a bit of a mess, and you're allowed to help them with their organization. And I coach at a lower level. I love coaching at a lower level. I don't want to coach at a varsity level because you develop the habits to success. I get to, help them get organized, help them know what to do. So they go to varsity, they go to sixth form, which is their senior year. They go to college, and they have been helped to learn time management. They have been helped success in the Woodberry way, which is, again, a place of honor and integrity and respect. They know to work hard. They know that what they should do should be done with attention to detail. And, when we talk about coaching and styles and points of emphasis, it's the little things, and allowing that development, who they are as a person and who they are as an athlete, is going to help them in athletics and academics. But ultimately, we know if you're lucky to be successful in sports, you might last till you're 27 if you're really, really lucky, but you have to have something afterwards. And hopefully that something is a smart, functioning, respectful human being. And I think boarding school really allows you to be all hands in and get that development going.
Thank you for that. Very different, obviously, coaching where I started at a big public school to being at a smaller boarding school where you just described that there's no downtime, which is fine, but you're involved in these kids' lives from the beginning of the day to the end. It's not just the 2 hours you get in the afternoon, but even so, you've had that experience as well. But it's helpful, I think, for the audience to understand that you're coming from that lens as you talk about a few things that may or may not be applicable. I'm going to go right at
this. But you just got to be able to compartmentalize it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to go right at, I think, the elephant in the room here, which I've always appreciated about you, and ask the question of what challenges have you faced being a female that coaches football and getting into that space, and now also working at an all-boys school, and what that brings with it, and how you would advise, how you would talk to people that may be in a similar boat, and let's just say they can't get taken seriously because people aren't always open-minded. Like, can you talk a little bit about that journey?
I remember asking Michelle Grogan when I interviewed to be a JV football coach, what are the boys going to be like? And she, was very honest that they really were open to it. I remember when I was applying, I sent out letters and emails to various coaches when I was living in Monterey, to Pacific Grove, to Palma, and I mentioned, hey, I dropped the line somewhere that I was a female. I was the first female to ever receive a scholarship from USC football for my work, and didn't hear back. And I remember I emailed Al Avila at Seaside, a historic program. Al's amazing, and I left that part out, that I was a female. And when I go and meet with him, he had talked to a mutual friend of ours, Sam Garcia, and Sam had said, she's a female. He goes, no, I didn't. And so he tells me, he says, you didn't tell me you were a female. And I said, does it matter? If it matters to you that because I'm a female, all of my qualifications go out of the way, I don't need to be here. We solved that elephant in the room. And he believed me. Al is an amazing mentor, an amazing coach. He doesn't care who you are. He doesn't care your background. He doesn't care your socioeconomic status. It's what can you bring? And, that I think, like football at Stevenson, that added to my resume. It added to my list of, people who believed in me, and we had a very successful season. So when I went on from there, I was at Jesuit High School. Jesuit, again, a historic program, and they knew me. My brother went there. I went to the sister school. They saw my qualifications. They didn't care. All boys school. Were there boys within that time frame who cared? I don't know. They certainly didn't bring it up to me. And I think with my knowledge, if there was any doubt, hopefully they saw I proved myself and saying, well, what should I do in this situation? How am I going to play this? I do remember, though, in our first year at Stevenson, Tommy and Sam and I, things you do when you're coaching in your 20s, you actually get into the practice with them. And we're talking football. So, I mean, we're in it. And when they saw that I could pull the move, like, all right, she's good. She's got it. It does come into play when you're tackling, tackle low. And, I was like, okay, so I with, all things appropriate, put my arm around a kid and he keeps running. I'm like, okay, so I can't stop him. Then you grab the knees, boom, down he goes. And like, all right, she's got it. So just proving, all those things. I'm in the weight room every day. My alarm goes off at 4:30, 5 a.m. I'm in there. So when the boys come in, they're seeing me do the workout. So they know I can do it. I'm not just talk. Certainly having USC in my background buys me points. And it probably buys me points that a lot of other females wouldn't have. As far as being a female specifically, going into it, USC, they contacted me last year. And this girl, she's a student coach now. Her name is Graciela. She was affiliated with Modern Day. She said, I want to be a coach. What's your advice to me? And I reached out to a lot of girls, women I knew in sports, said, well, what's your advice? Mm-hmm. And women are held to a much higher standard. Mm-hmm. You don't date within, the coaching program. You don't date within the program. You're looked at a much more conservative lens. Mm-hmm. You got to be careful about that. And, I had a couple crushes at when I was at SC on guys who played football. You didn't do it because those girls were talked about, whether it was true or false. Mm-hmm. That ruins your reputation. So mm-hmm. you really have to walk a conservative path, be very mindful of your dress, who you hang mm-hmm. out with. Mm-hmm. You were never going to be on the row and at a party. You went straight home. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, I'm not much of a.
This is while you're a student, not once you're on staff afterwards, right? Just navigating the student assistant life, male or female.
Both, and those lessons that I took from being at USC that I followed there have carried me over, as a coach, is that, you're going to be looked at as a much more conservative lens. Mm-hmm. You got to be on time. You got to be ready. Mm-hmm. You have to be it's all about football. It's not about anything else. So you have to be so focused on the development of the game and the development of the students. So you got to come prepared, yeah. At an all boys school, I think in the classroom, academics are academics. They're used to seeing very strong female teachers throughout their lives. I have never been ma'amed more in my life until I came to Woodberry. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Will do, ma'am. So they're very respectful. And over time, just with conversations, it wins you over. Mm-hmm. I have amazing boys this year. It always warms my heart. DJ Clayton, whether he's on practice or he's in my class, he leaves. And I said, all right, thank you. It goes, all right, I appreciate you, Miss Hamilton. Like, I appreciate you too. And that comes with time. But you got to be having all your ducks in a row, ready to go. And mistakes are fewer, I think. But
have you seen that evolve since? I mean, you've been doing this for at least, I don't know, 15 years probably at this point. Have you seen an evolution at all culturally in society where there are more opportunities based on the trailblazers, the Becky Hammonds of the world that are showing, for everybody that not only are you capable, but probably better at your job than many other people? Like, have you seen, talk about it, what evolution you've seen in that?
I mean, the idea that, look at Michigan, he's got a Power 5 school. He's got a female football coach on staff. There's a woman who was coaching with the Niners. I don't know if she's still coaching right now. You're definitely seeing with time, there's an all referee women's crew. And it wasn't that they not know their knowledge. It might also be like, are they willing to handle what some of these individuals who are not respectful, whether they're spectators or what, they got to listen to you, and can you handle any pushback? And so, I mean, definitely seeing women pop up in areas that they wouldn't have before, for sure. Woodberry Forest has been very supportive, and I even saw it at Cardigan. There's women head coaches, they were coaching hockey. Renee Hicks at Woodbury had an undefeated basketball season here at Woodberry Forest. Abby Mills is a head coach as well. So I've seen it for sure here at a historically, sound school with all male presence. But also I think being in boarding school, a lot of people don't know is you have 2 after school activity assignments. Sometimes it's sports, sometimes you're the drama teacher, but you may never have coached field hockey in your life, and they're going to give you a stick like, okay, you're the head coach, practice starts tomorrow, you're going to fill this role. So somehow or another, you're going to be on that staff. But I think proving yourself, a lot of women have had a lot of success and have achieved ground, certainly more so than we're seeing from when I was certainly in high school, back in 1999, 2000. So the numbers are there. But in my experience, I've never had a problem with it. You do wonder sometimes watching a head coach that's a female and a ref, like, okay, would they have gotten that call if she wasn't a female? And could she talk back and say, hey, can I get an explanation on why, that technical was called, and they just sort of brush her off? Or, why was that card pulled? Can be allowed to have that conversation or an explanation that she doesn't.
It's always an interesting dynamic, and I've always appreciated you being in the thick of it. And I think it's important that people, if that's their passion, go out and take risks and don't take no for an answer, right? And like, you figured out how to get in the trenches, and now here you are, however many years later, on to the next step. So let me pivot now and ask this, because we all evolve as coaches, and who we were when we were young and who we are now, whatever timeline horizon you're on is what it is. But what did you need to figure out when you first started, even with your background? I was in USC rooms, like, I got football dialed. And then you finally get out there for the first time, and it's like, wow, what shifted where you were like, okay, I don't know him as much as I think I do?
Definitely looking at a more advanced playbook, and then it's just going to be schoolhouse, right? What it was when you were, playing flag football on the playground, like, oh my, this is what a detailed playbook looks like. So you really have to level up on your terminology. You got to be quick thinking, and your first practice, it happens fast, and you got to be able to have an answer. I never had a losing season, I think, in my life, prior to, it was probably 2013. Whether it was at USC, whether it was in high school. I mean, we were NorCal champs. There was no state tournament, but I mean, the only game we lost in golf was against Jesuit High School, but we cleared the floor with the boys. There was a high school that wouldn't even shake our hands because we beat them so bad. I was used to girls playing. I was used to winning. The thing as a coach for me was accepting that there wasn't going to be a winning season. Okay, maybe you lose 1 or 2, but accepting a losing season, how do I grapple with that? And how does that define me? Is it, I take things for, like, we have a bad day of practice. I'll look over at one of our coaches. I'm like, is it me? Is it me? Am I not doing it? And the next day they do great. You're like, what same guys, what happened today? This year was interesting because for me, we didn't have a winning season, and when we lost, I was actually like, the boys care so much. I mean, there were some games they wanted to win so badly, and you could see it in their eyes. They were so upset, and I was okay. And I kept thinking back to Wooden, like, I did my best, gentlemen. We did our best to become who we needed to be, but also this isn't everything. This is JV football. It's one of the things where there's tragedies much worse in the world than losing a JV football game, and My purpose, I feel, as a JV coach is not to win every game. Because if I wanted to win every game, I could just blitz 7 guys and just go like that. My role as a JV coach is to prepare them for what they're going to need to do on varsity. And that is know that everyone has a different assignment. All right. You may have to drop into zone. And there may be a kid who doesn't want to drop into zone. Goes, oh, no. We had a kid like this one year when I was coaching, and he's running around like, no, your job is to go here. Well, I don't know. You got to stay here because everyone else is covering those spots. If you leave, that's going to leave this open. And he fought me on that. And every so often you have kids that are fighting you for playing time. They're fighting you for one reason or another because it's new, and they've always been, from about Pee-wee through maybe freshman year, you can get away with being a selfish athlete. But that doesn't work JV varsity. And really, I don't want to say breaking them down because that sounds like a pretty intense word, but allowing them to see that their role in a team is to be part of it, not the center. And I asked this kid, I said, what do you do in your last team? He said, well, I got to roam the field and the other 10 guys had to do something else. I'm like, I can't create 2 defenses. That's not how this works. And so that is, for me, if we're getting that done, and we had an amazing final game against Episcopal. We had like 5-6 sacks. I mean, we were dropping, we were covering, we were making tackles, we were forcing them to punt. They now know everyone has a role. They now know sometimes I shouldn't make, some calls of like, hey, get him out. I know that he's doing his best. And if they have that comprehension of get in the weight room, of this is my job, play my assignment, then they're going to go on to varsity, and Jackson is going to do great things with them. And I'm like, here you go. This is 22 guys that will play with their heart. They will play what you ask them to do. Mm-hmm. And now, however you want to devise the schematics, here it is. But that's his job. My job is to, bring them through the levels and,
well, and help them grow and develop talent. Like you said, I love coaching lower levels because I get my hands on everybody and I get to help them grow into who they can become. And it's what you just described.
But developing mentality too. Mm-hmm. I remember, John Wood, who I love John Wood. And he was talking about, when he was with Sidney Wiggs, who fought him all the time. And he's like, Coach, I'm the best player on the team. I should be out there, and wouldn't. And not many people would have the privilege that Wooden has to tell a guy this. He says, you are the best player on our team, but when you're on the court, we're not the best team. You can never tell your all-star that now, but
hell yes, you can. You show them the plus minus data. Here you go. Stats don't lie.
It wouldn't, but the thing is like, yeah, I need the best team on the field. I need the best team on the court. And that's what we've signed up to do, is to be the best team. And this is your role right now. Even Abdul-Jabbar, even Walton had to grab that rebound and then throw it a fast break as fast as he could. They were great rebounders and they were great shooters, but they had to be a rebounder too.
Absolutely. All right. Let me pivot here. I want you to think about this one before you answer. What is the best thing you do in your program? And by that, I mean, what's transferable if you were to go somewhere else to another school, show up, you're the head coach or you're not, whatever, but we're going to do this because regardless of sport, discipline, specialty, like this is impactful. And I ask this in regards to how we share resources and attempt to borrow from other people or give to other people so that they can have more successful experiences. But what do you think that is for you?
Okay. Are you talking transferable in teams of like actual like physical resources, or are you talking philosophy?
For example, Brandon Laird and Kevin Nosik, who are 2 of my basketball buddies, colleagues, mentors that were at Davis with me, that have been successful head coaches and assistants forever. And years ago, I went, and I don't remember if it was when Brandon was head coach or Kevin, but I went to their practice and I watched and saw them before they practiced. They have their little pregame and then the whole team hugged. And then after practice, same thing. And I was like, what is that all about? He's like, look, what happens during practice happens during practice. We want to make sure that our guys know that we're going to still have relationship after. And so it's something I've done for 15 years at this point, ever since. Like, we hug before, we hug after games, same thing, to have a point of opening and closure. But also with young men, which I primarily coach these days, they're not taught from a societal standpoint how to emote. So like, we're trying to create an environment where that's possible. And so that's something that no matter what team I coach, like, we do that.
I'm thinking back to, like, again, this is my first few years at Stevenson. And even here, it's the standard, and it's the standard and respect to which you give to your coaches, which you give to your teammates. When there have been times where there's been ego, I have been blessed to have Germano Denise and Jackson Mateo, Jeff Young, and Matt Blunden, who's our head coach. It's about respect. It's about standard. It's about care, compassion. And if you are allowing one student, one player to not be respectful, to not hold the standard, the whole thing's going to fall apart, because other kids, it's going to, well, he gets to do it. Well, he gets to do it. Now, there are different, different players have different standards. I mean, of course. I mean, if you have a kid that, is making 23 points a game, you're going to hold him like, hey, you're not going to allow him slacking by any means. Like, what he can do. And when you call him out, you're actually calling him up like, hey, you're better than this. So definitely the standard. As far as coaching and practice, I remember, I can tell you right now what Greg Burns from UCLA is doing. He was my first coach that I worked with. He had the basics, fundamentals, and he coached Troy Polamalu. He coached Jason Leach, a couple guys that went up, Darnell Bing, all went to the pros. And he coached the same drills every day. We went through the agiles, then we went to the wall, did hands and step, practiced the jam, then we dropped back on the lines, drop back angle, drop back. I mean, they're just basic. And he didn't try and fancy it up. Just get the basics down, the reaction time, the visual, that will all come. You don't need to make a fancy drill to make it work. And all of my drills, I bore my players to death. They are repetitious, they are simplistic, but they're getting the job done. As for,
well, I'm going to just interrupt you, Coach, and I'm going to tell people who didn't listen to that, that is the recipe for success. Ask Kobe, ask the great teachers. Simplicity wins. Repetition is Lord and Master. Don't complicate winning.
Yeah, and so that to me was a basic thing that I just learned. You don't need to go on YouTube every night and find a new drill. It's if you're pass rushing one game, maybe during the week you practice the figure eights a little bit more. But every day we're doing hands, every day we're doing practice. Linebackers, every day you're dropping back and you're coming forward. So those are just basic things. And he's probably still doing them now. But that was success. He also taught me your second string needs to be ready to go for your first string. And Troy Polamalu on the championship game at the Orange Bowl against Iowa, his leg he's out. All I'm going to say is he's out. There's a story behind it. And Jason Leach is stretching and they say, hey, Jason, you're starting. He goes, what? And we won that game because he prepared his second and third string just as well as he prepared his first string. And just because a kid is not the starter, he needs playing time. You do not put him on the bench when you're doing team drills. Maybe you have 2 versus 1, 2 second string versus second string, but that kid needs playing time because someone's going to get injured. We had our defensive line kind of got sick this year, or someone, was injured. And little Nelson Stark, the kid is about 5'6". He's like, I'll play D tackle. We worked with him, and that kid's first game, he broke through and he got a sack. So you can't just say, okay, I'm going to depend on this guy being there because he may not be there. Right. So you have to have, a backup plan. Everyone has a plan until they get hit. Carroll, he was all about tapping in. And that was the idea that when you walk through that door, he actually had a sign, I'm in, and you hit it. And if your, girlfriend was giving you trouble, he told the guys, you leave her outside. You're focused on here. If, the Heisman race is getting too much, or there's pressure, or you're feeling, family's calling on you and you can't deal with the stress, that's left out there. Here, it's about something else. Mm-hmm. And so just making it about something else. But no, I very much agree that you got to tell and you got to show the kids you care. Mm-hmm. And I think I hope my students, my boys, I still call them my boys, whether it's Adam Mary, who, God, that kid's graduated 2009, Connor Finch, Leo Sim, Brandon Cottle. I mean, all those boys, they're still my boys, and I still love them to death, and just remembering all of them. And if they want to go into the weight room first thing in the morning, like, all right, I'll be there at 6. And I did not live on campus. I was not working for Stevenson. I got from my apartment, I drove, and we got up in the morning and we worked out. During the summer, like, hey, I want to get better. And I didn't say, hey, go to this camp. I said, there's some camps you want to go to. But I knew if I wanted to win, and I knew if I wanted to want them to win for me, I had to develop my free time, and we're going to block out, and we're going to do some drops. We're going to do some drills. I'm going to teach them how to, go through film. And every day, you tell them you care about them. You ask how they're doing in classes. Al Avila had a saying, he says, because, he had guys that were on rival gangs on the same team. And he would tell the boys, I love you. And that was probably one of the first times some of these boys have heard a male who played for the Raiders in the 70s, say, I love you. And he showed love to his own sons, and he showed it to his own players. And he said, you don't have to like each other, but you have to love each other. And there may be days where they don't like each other. There may be days where they don't like me, but we have to always love each other. And again, that just goes back to the standard of giving it back and not just vocalize it. Every coach has like the slogans on the wall. Slogans mean nothing if you're not actually giving in that extra time. They will not give an extra time if you're not giving an extra time.
For sure. No, that's gold. And I think that's a great place to transition from in regards to what you can offer to those listening. And where I want to go next is I'm on this soapbox for the last 10, 12, 13 years of the value of the multi-sport athlete and the old school approach of being a seasonal kid versus, and hell, a seasonal coach at this point for me, versus the sports specialization and what I call the youth sports industrial complex and how they're destroying athletics. But what have you learned watching other sports that aren't football? And hell, golf for that matter. You coach golf too, but it's like that you've been able to translate in some capacity to coaching those sports, but you saw it somewhere else and you're like, hey, I'm going to do that, whether it's conceptual, whether it's specific. What are some things that you've stolen from other disciplines that have made not you a better coach only, but have also enhanced your athletes' experiences and have allowed you to be a better teacher?
Well, so we used to do a drill at SC where you get just hands reaction where they would take a tennis ball and fire the tennis ball with a tennis racket, so the kid would just learn to move his hands together. And I translated that for a brief time. Again, boarding school world, I was the goalie coach for the lacrosse team, and so this girl never was like, all right, so move, and I would just fire it as fast, and so she would just have to keep her hands together and move that ball. And if we couldn't find anyone to fire, of course, the padding to begin with, but just a safe place where she could just learn to move those hands, eye-hand coordination. In terms of myself and looking at the 3-sport athlete, one of the best things I tell my 3 boys right now who are my advisees, I said, what are you doing for your winter commitment? For a bunch of the 2 of them played soccer and Will played football. I know Will, he may make varsity lacrosse. JV, I mean, he's a heavily recruited lacrosse player from Texas. Maybe JV, can't call it. But he says, he's going to do squash. Have you ever played squash? No. And he got cut, but he ended up doing, I think he's doing intramurals. And to me, that's the best thing he can do, because for one season, there's no winning record. There's no losing record. There's no trophies. And he just gets to have fun. And that's the best thing that I think they can take time off, remember to have fun. One of the great memes is not, high school sports is not to earn a scholarship. It's to learn to be a better person, a better teammate, a better player, communicator. And a better person, a better teammate is just remembering it's just a game. And it's hard to feel like that sometimes because there are pressures, there are traditions, that you want to do well in. And it's certainly prevalent on social media. We're like, who's winning, who's losing. But at the end of the day, the 3-sport athlete, there's a sport that you don't really care about, and that's fine. You can, and I knew a kid, his parents made him do a team sport. And then, even though he was an individual swimmer, you have to do a team sport, and you have to do one rec league sport when he was growing up. So he could not be on competition swimming all 3 years. He had to play like rec soccer. And it didn't matter how good, there was going to be one season with no travel teams, just rec neighborhood kids. And that was the requirement. And I thought that was brilliant.
Yep.
That, appreciation for the team, but appreciation for lack of resources sometimes, that you're playing on a field with rocks. And it gives appreciation, it gives love of the game. And I think when you're immersed in something, you're going to feel tired of it, and you don't want them to burn out. There may be a time where it's time to retire, it's time for you to be done, but never burn out to the point where I hate this and you never want to look at that sport again. Always be able to look back on it with enjoyment. And I think the 1-sport athlete certainly does that. But I mean, and I hope they learn just health for life. Sure. If we get older and we're like, man, I can't have a donut and Coke for breakfast anymore. And, I used to be able to burn this off, and now you got to work out. Just as long as they know to be healthy within their adult lifestyle. Yeah, that's the end goal.
Exactly. Well, thanks for sharing that. We're going to end with this question. And again, it's a processing one. I picked this up from a guy named Dave Stahoviak, who runs a podcast and website called Coaching for Leaders. And he always asks this question, which is, what is something you have most recently changed your mind on? And the thought of it is, it's a growth mindset question, right? So it's like, I used to be over here and now I'm over here, and here's why. And so I always kind of float that, and it doesn't have to be sport or coaching related. It can be, but what is that for you, Coach, that you were pretty dug in somewhere and you've reevaluated at this point, and now you're think differently about it?
It's not that important. And that's what's changed, is that, I was so invested in it when I was 22, 23 years old. It was all consumed, and fortunately we were great. So it didn't, anger me, but I didn't want to be around failure. And now even when we fail, I'm going to say something, everyone's going to be like, oh my God, it's okay. When you watch your mom die, in the way that my mom did with sepsis, and I know, Coach Clubman at Stevenson, passed away with, cancer, and a few others, which are a little bit more severe. But when you watch the people you care about go through awful things, and when you're a coach and a teacher and you see kids die in drunk driving accidents, when you see, they go off to war and they don't come back, it's just a game. And I really let that competition go. This is not USC football. When I was playing golf, I was very fortunate to play Pebble Beach quite a few times. And I remember being—
Yeah, actually, you got me out there for the first time ever. I appreciate you to this day.
Yeah. And I remember, because I was such a good golfer in college and high school, that like, if I didn't shoot, 1 over, I was angry. And at some point I'm like, why are you angry about being at Pebble Beach and you're, plus whatever? Like, you're not going to break the course record. You're not looking to compete against anything that's of any pertinent significance, and so it was just sort of remembering that it's just a game, and taking that scorecard sometimes and throwing it out. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, let's do participation trophies and imagine, let's not keep score.
No,
yeah,
it's
you
win.
Channel competition, but at the same time, letting there's 8 million people in the world, that have it worse off than I do. And I could probably drive down X street in Sacramento and see all those people in tents and be like, you know what? Good. I might be 1 in 7, but I'm good.
Yeah. No, it's not that you're dismissing the value of competition and winning. It's what I've taken to saying lately is, you win or you learn. Those are the two outcomes. And you learn when you win, or you learn when you lose. And it's like, it's a snapshot of a singular moment in time. And if you focus on the process, you're going to grow. If you focus on outcome only, like, you're going to be a miserable human being. And so I think that's a great way to end this, a great way to give some advice, and appreciate you doing that. So thanks for being here today. I know it was a long time coming, but glad we got it in.